Hi, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Erica VanEaton. I really think you're going to like today's episode because I invite my friend, Laura Evenson, back on, and we talk about the vulnerability of opening up, not just opening up gifts, but allowing others to know that we have gifts. And we hope that this begins to normalize the conversation for you to have and accepting the gifts that you have and begins to normalize this conversation because everyone on the planet has intuitive gifts, healing gifts, channeling gifts. We're all doing it all the time. We just may not necessarily be aware or have words to express what those gifts are and how they're coming through us. And so I hope today's episode gives you some relief that you're A, not alone, B, maybe it'll give you some verbiage to use to explain to your friends your own experiences. Again, this podcast is about empowerment. This is about helping you step into your truest divine love light. So come join and enjoy the journey with Laura and I today as we really open up about some personal things. So come along and play with us today. I think it would be fun for us to talk a little bit about our backstories, about how we met and how we've been working together to help open your gifts, to help heal things, to help explore new ways of being. Do you want to let everyone know, Laura, how we met?
Yeah, yeah, I would love to. A friend of mine sent me a link of you speaking, and the reason he sent the link is because he had thought that you reminded him of me. And so I watched the podcast that you were on, and I just really connected to what you were saying. And I thought you were brilliant because the information was so incredible. And so I ended up contacting you, and we had a discovery call. And within that talk, we just connected so much that I knew I wanted to work with you, even though I felt like signing up for a package was, maybe something that I wasn't looking for. I felt like it was something I had to do, which was interesting.
I didn't coerce you to come into
No,
my
there was
world.
no pressure. I just remember you saying something like, well, like you said, well, I keep the energy really clean within my container, meaning like everybody that you take on. And I just remember saying to you, like, oh, good. Like, I'm not too dirty. Like, it's like, I was like, oh, fantastic. Like, if you consider me clean, you're my girl. Like,
I think what I meant by that was I don't ever want people or clients to be codependent on me as they're coming into their power. I think one of my main things with anybody that I work with when I decide if they would be a good fit for the mentorship container and how I knew you were a good fit for it is people go into it for different reasons. Some people really are just needing deep one-to-one healing work. Some people are really wanting to step into their healership and become more visible and become okay with that. But all of it for me is about, is this person ready and truly wanting to be self-empowered? Are they wanting to really commit to expressing the fullness of who they are? And that was something that I felt with you. I knew that you were ready for that. I get like a soul to soul connection, and I can feel either it's a yes or it's a no of, is this person ready to express or is this not? And you were very much a yes. And so I'm
thanks.
talking about keeping it clean. It's not you deriving your power through me. You being reliant on me to know your power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're ready to move forward and learn and grow, and you're
Yeah.
open. I would imagine the person you're working with has to be open.
Yeah. They have to be open and on the healing path. When I first started, I worked with people that were just beginning to be open, and everyone's on different paths, but it's got to be someone that is really ready to step into the truth of who they are and want to express that as a soul. What that means to me is I look at my oldest son and people with differences who struggle so much with being able to express what's going on a soul level through their physical body because the vibrational match is too different. And so I'm that liaison for them to express their brilliance and bring forward what they teach for the rest of humanity. So it's very important to me that anyone that comes into my world or chooses to work with me is someone that is wanting to express the greatest form of source that they are along their healing journey, and not someone that's wanting to hide or just be reliant upon me to do the healing work for them, because that's not moving energy forward. So if you are stepping into your power, I saw you, I knew that you wanted to share your work with other people. So
Hmm.
that is the waterfall effect that I want. It's I came into this line of work through telepathic communication with people that were nonverbal or struggled verbally and brought their wisdom and brilliance forward because we're learning how to become a new type of human. We're learning how to rewire our system to hold more light, to hold more source energy. And so it's not going to be beneficial for them if I'm just doing it, with one person at a time. That's not then going to promote that forward. If you're in your power, though, if I'm working with people that are wanting to work with people in their power, you're empowering other people to do the same thing, to express their I am, to step into a bigger sphere of light, basically, and share that with the world. That cascade effect is so much more beneficial. And I get a lot of joy out of that. I work with people on the spectrum, and they're not going to go out and do speaking engagements or things like that, but they are there for a specific reason, and they get to share all that light, whether they can verbally express or not. Other
Hmm.
people, I get a lot of my clients speaking engagements. I introduce them to podcast hosts or telesummit hosts, or trying to get them opportunities when they're ready to show up and be in their power and express their wisdom.
Yeah, which is the reason why I wanted to work with you, is to learn to teach me how to become a healer, basically an energy healer, to work more with energy. I was working with energy in the Akashic records, but it was to also bring that into the body and to be able to do that for other people, which is what your whole thing is about, is to help others, to so that they can help other people too and themselves.
So we are all source energy. We can call it the I am, but we all hold different codes of light within us. All our core frequencies are slightly different versions of source. Now, every aspect of source is within us, but there's certain codes within you that speak very loudly and shine differently, that are very quiet for me. And I have a different set of codes that are very loud for me, that are quiet for you. So we're all these different expressions of source, and every experience that we have moves through the source codes that we are differently. People come into my world that are ready to release all the distortions and the illusions and strip themselves back down to that pure source energy and shine that out to the world. I'm writing a book calling it The Unity Method, and it's about self love and allowing yourself to shine that light out to the world.
Yeah, and that was my main thing in regard to working with you. Self love has been a big work in progress for me, coming into my own sovereignty, and then also having the practice to bring more into my business, and so that I could bring that to others. So it was like a perfect fit. Um, and then I think as we went along, we had a lot of synchronicity that we noticed going along. We had a conversation about me asking about our relationship in the records, and you were like, "Yeah, maybe you should do that." And what I found was that we had been sisters in a past life, and then also that I was your husband, which was shocking, to say the least. Um, I will say I was a very, very good husband. Um, I, they showed me like a picture of me sitting by your bed, like nursing you back into health. And so I feel like
I
now,
truly appreciated that, by the way.
now it's your turn to like get me where I'm supposed to be. But yeah, it's funny because I feel like when you learn about a past life, and the more that I do learn about past lives, and I know the people that I'm reading enough to know their essence, it carries through, and it's so interesting. And it's so interesting that since we have done podcasts together, what my friends are saying is like that we sound similar, and sometimes they
Mhm.
don't know which one's talking because we sound so similar and we speak very similarly. So
Mhm. That's
it's
fun.
funny. Yeah.
It's fun. I remember the first time when we were working together that I took you to the Bosnian pyramids.
Yeah.
So, for people that don't understand, when you're in a meditative state and you slow everything down, when you slow everything down, you slow your brain waves down and you expand your energy out, out, out. But there is no time space in the energy field that connects all things. So, we had experiences together in the Bosnian pyramids. And so we took our energy there just through intention, traveled through time space to be there, and took you into this healing chamber and you started doing a spontaneous healing on me.
Oh my God. Yeah, I remember that. First of all, I didn't even know there were pyramids in Bosnia. So that was shocking. Um, yeah, I've gone back there too. Um, like it's very easy to channel that energy from I think it's the Pyramid of the Sun there.
Mm-hmm.
Still, yeah, even though there's one in Egypt too. But yeah, I could see that space so clearly. Um, and it's something I return to because the energy of it is so powerful, and you can tap into that, which you showed me.
And so sometimes walking this path with someone helps you feel more safe and relax so that these gifts that you have can come forward because you feel kind of held. I don't want anyone to ever think like if you're working with a healer that they're above you. They're teaching you how to do healing work. That's why I say like this is waterfall because even though maybe I'm able to articulate it a little bit more than the person that I'm working with, it doesn't mean that I'm above them. I'm receiving at the same time. I've just been doing it for a slightly longer period of time. So I have words to express it. And that's my thing. I'm able to articulate the energy. Everyone has a slightly different thing. This is not abnormal. I know it hasn't been normalized, and we're probably going to get into that a little bit, but this isn't abnormal. Everyone can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the difference is that it's a practice. And so you've been at it longer. So you're able to tap in to things that I haven't tapped into yet, or I'm just learning to. Um, but yeah, anybody, I mean, I think that's the biggest lesson is that anybody can do this
Yeah.
as long as you're open to trying it
Hmm.
and allowing, because I think we can, if we're not open to it, it just blocks it.
And feeling worthy enough to receive. When I first really started opening my gifts, it came really in layers. When my son came in, we had the soul to soul connection and things were happening, but I wasn't really awake. I didn't understand energy or spirituality or anything like that. And it wasn't until we lost it and I was heading into depression that I started deep breath work, which gave me a harmonic internal emotional state that eventually started opening up my gifts and our telepathic communication opened back up because my vibration shifted and I could. But I remember the first time I asked for Jesus to come sit with me. It was like at 3 o'clock in the morning. I just got done feeding a night feeding. I nursed all my kids for a year. So I'm sitting in my living room after the feeding and I asked Jesus to be with me and I could feel just this divine loving presence that was so strong come in, but I couldn't receive it. I was like bawling, and I heard myself say, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of receiving. And at that point, I was like, oh my God, like I thought I had done all this work, but I'm not there yet. I haven't opened myself up to receiving yet. So that was the next step. And then as I started allowing worthiness to come in and really started working on the internal unity process, that worthiness got quiet and became, of course I am, because I am. And understanding that, then it was like 3 months later, I asked for Jesus to be with me again. And at that point, I could allow love to come in, and messages really started rolling through me at that point because I could receive them because I was worthy enough and my nervous system could handle it.
Mm-hmm.
So, how
That's
did that
interesting.
start for you?
Well, I remember I was learning about spheres of light, and I had learned that putting a sphere of pink unconditional love around me, and then a sphere of divine white light, and then a sphere of the golden light of protection. So I was using that practice, and I was doing it at night and in the morning, and then I would just kind of sit in these spheres of light. And there was one night where Jesus or Yeshua walked into the sphere to talk to me, and it was nothing that I had expected. I wasn't calling him in; he just came in, and he spoke to me. And I don't remember the exact conversation that we had, but what I remember is the next day I went into the Akashic Records and asked I was asking questions. I was asking why did that happen? Like why would he ever choose me? And what came through is why not you? You're just as important as any guru. So why not you?
Yeah,
And so it was just this like aha moment, like, oh, yeah, why not? You know?
yeah.
But yeah, it does boil down to worthiness.
But before that, like, what brought you into your spiritual journey?
Well, okay. So what first started my journey down the spiritual road was that I had this fear of death. Our kids were tiny at the time, and Darren, I don't know if he was deployed or not, but we were living outside New Orleans, and I saw I saw James Van Prague, who's a psychic medium, on The View of all shows. Like that was not my one of my favorites or anything, but that day somehow he was on, and he was talking about spirits, and they were, I think one of them said something that I could relate to, which was, I think they asked the questions like, do ghosts watch us shower? Something like that. And I ended up being like, like, oh, like, well, do they? Like, I just started thinking about it, and I bought his book. Um, and then that opened up um, just this idea that, you know, there were others around us all the time. I had grown up Catholic, but like, and I knew that, we did believe in the spirit world and God and Jesus and all of that, but like, it just opened up more of that world. And then I started reading uh, Brian Weiss's books because he was a psychiatrist or psychologist, and he ended up getting trained in hypnosis because everybody else was kind of doing it, and he wanted to stay competitive. And then he had a client come, and she started going back into past life regressions, and he started recording his sessions, and then ended up writing books, and I started reading those books, and it just kind of went on from there, where it just kept opening up my mind to these other things. And then finally I read The Secret, which was all about the law of attraction and positive thinking, and that ended up changing my life in the sense of like paying attention to my thoughts and turning negative thoughts around and seeing how much it affected how I felt. So
I
that's
read
how.
that book right before I got pregnant with my oldest, but it exhausted me. Like trying to think about my thoughts all the time. I was
Oh, I remember that
exhausted.
too. It was
Yeah,
like the practice.
because it didn't give you the baseline. There was a lot of things missing, but it was a good, like, kind of awakening book. Okay. And then how'd you get into the Akashic Records?
So then, fast forward, I ended up during COVID. I ended up signing up for Martha Beck's life coach certification, and after that, I there was a teacher that was teaching classes, and she was from Minnesota, and I said, oh, I'm from Minnesota. I'm going to go visit my parents, and she said, where are they from? And she figured out that there was a coach that had a shop in the area. And so I went to that shop, and on the shelf, there was this book about the Akashic Records, and I had never heard of that. I didn't know what the Akashic Records were. And I ended up going home, and like I couldn't stop thinking about this book. And so I ordered it and read the book. And it was like, it just brought everything that I'd ever learned from reading other books, other kind of metaphysical or psychic or medium books, past life. It brought it all together, and it all made sense. And I remember like almost highlighting the whole book, and I was just like, oh my God, this is connecting everything. This is so great. And then I started practicing reading the Akashic Records. And that's when I had a notebook, and I would have a question in my mind and think, okay, what would my answer to this question be? And I'd write that down, and then I'd go into the Akashic Records and get and ask the same questions, and it would be a much broader, and it would contain much more wisdom than my answer, which was smaller minded. And then a lot of self doubt came in, and I shared with a friend what I was doing, and she was like, yeah, I don't know about that. And just her saying that added to my own self doubt. And I thought, well, yeah, this is just my imagination. And then I was training at Kripalu Center in the Berkshires, and there was a professional Akashic reader there. And so I went and had a session with her. And the first thing she said was, they want you to know this is not your imagination, and you will be doing this work. And it just rang true. And so I came home and read Linda Howe's book, got into her certifications, and then just started doing this work for other people. So that's how it started. So, how did you start? Like, when did you realize that you felt the energy, or that there was something else?
Well, I had experiences growing up. I talked with animals quite a bit when I was growing up. I never told anybody or shared any of that.
Like,
But
telepathically, like, talk to them, or just.
yeah, like I had this horse named Santina who was in Appaloosa. She was my first horse. I think I was in third grade when I got her. She was amazing, but I would just take off riding with her by myself. And I was in third, like a little kid. I can't believe my parents let me do that. I mean, most of the time they didn't know because I would just go out there and kind of saddle her up myself. And we would, because we lived out in the country, and I would just go. But remember it wasn't like it was obvious communication. It was like I just knew things. She trusted me, I trusted her, and we would do all sorts of things. But like one of the most obvious things that like I could speak on was we she loved to roll in dirt like a dog. So the first time that we went into this field with soft dirt, I heard hop off. So I kicked my feet out and I hopped off, and she laid down and she rolled in the dirt, and then she got up and she shook off and she waited till I got back on. Um, and then off we went. Like I never thought anything of it. It was just communication like that occurred.
Hmm.
But that pretty much shut down over time. When I was in junior high, my grandpa had passed away of cancer. My dad's family is really close, and just amazing energy that family is. And we were all together at Thanksgiving after he had died. And I remember looking up at the head of the table because I felt him before I could see him. I felt him standing there, and I felt him smiling and so happy that we were all together. And I look up and I saw him. And it's not like I really thought anything of it. I didn't. I just was like, I looked around the table, realized nobody else had any idea that he was there. So I just kind of let that go. And then read The Secret like you did before I had Caden. And I had started kind of meditating a little bit. But then you know how it is right after you have a baby, you're exhausted. And then we had this diagnosis, and it was just like onslaught therapy, like nonstop going. So I forgot about it. But we did have that telepathic communication, and I was understanding things. Like I would get these words in my head, and I was like, oh, he's not filtering life through an ego. Now, I didn't have any idea what that meant, but I was getting things like that.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I wasn't spiritual. I didn't understand energy, even though I was working in a hospital with frequency waves as a ultrasound
Yeah.
sonographer. And so it wasn't until we started school and we lost our connection and I was going down into depression that I started doing the deep breath work just to try to pull myself out of the downward spiral I was in. And then I had packed all my kids up. It was spring break, 3 kids, and it was a 19-hour drive to my parents' house. They had moved to Wyoming right outside of Yellowstone. And my husband couldn't go because he was working. So I was driving the kids and I turn on the radio and there's this angelic reader on there. And I've never heard one. I didn't know they existed, but she was just like nailing people like that were calling in, and my whole heart lit up. And so as soon as I got back home, I contacted her and I scheduled an appointment and I had a reading, and she just like blew my socks off. I had never cried so hard or felt so seen and understood in my entire life. And I was like, okay, this is something that I have to explore. So it was that. And then my kids were all super psychic when they were born. So my oldest son had always talked to people since he had been born. And I knew he was talking to people. But again, it's like this disconnect of acknowledging, but not acknowledging. I
Hmm.
never said it wasn't real, but it's not like I just kept it outside of me. And then my middle, as soon as he could start talking, we moved into this very haunted neighborhood. He would come out of bed at like 18 months and he would tell me, Mom, there's a person in my room, or Mom, there's an angel by the window. And then my third did the same thing. So I realized, okay, there's a lot more going on. I'm going to have to start acknowledging this and I'm going to have to figure this out. But it wasn't until I had a miscarriage and I didn't tell anybody about it because I was already full of shame because at that point, my oldest was 6 and we had lost our connection because he was in school struggling. And then I have this miscarriage and I'm like, I'm a complete failure. So I was cooking dinner in the kitchen, and my middle one, who was 3 at the time, was sitting there eating a snack, and he was talking to someone sitting in the chair beside him. And I looked, and there wasn't anybody there. And I said, "Hey, who are you talking to?" And he's like, "I'm talking to my little sister." I knew that I had miscarried a girl, but I didn't. My husband didn't even know. Like I had told nobody. And at
Hmm.
that, like, just hit me. Like it just, I don't even know how to describe the kind of break in my energy field that caused because I had just kind of shoved it and not dealt with it. But he was laughing and talking with this little girl. And I kind of just sunk to my knees at that point and I said, I give up. And things began to unravel from there. So
Wow.
I got
Wow.
pregnant again, had my third. Then we took that trip to Wyoming, heard the angelic reader. I was like, okay, this is where my life has to go. It didn't feel like it was an option. It was
Hmm.
like I have to go that direction.
So when your kids were telling you they were angels in their room, could you see them? Like
I
when you went
felt
in it?
them. I've always been really clear sentient. Like I've always felt things, but I didn't have words because I
Hmm.
couldn't see them. And
Yeah.
then I didn't know other people didn't feel them. I just kind of assumed that everyone felt these things but didn't know what it was. But then I really started paying attention to say when they said they would see something, I would pay attention to what I felt. And then I began to understand, okay, this is a human spirit. This feels more like an angelic. And that's how I started kind of playing around with that
How did you
understanding.
how did you know the difference between a human and angelic? Like how did
Because they would tell me, they'd be like, ah,
you
it's a man in my room, or no, this is an angel. Like one time I was reading with my youngest on our bed, and he looked over at the window in our room, and I felt like this amazing energy, and I could kind of hear high pitched ringing in my ears. And he said, "Oh, there's rainbow angels by the window." And so
Mm.
then I was like, I let that soak in, and I could feel that. And so they were, I mean, they've been my teachers the
So
whole
can
time.
he see them?
Now,
Like when he was saying there are rainbow angels, can he see them? Like,
yeah.
okay, so he's not just feeling the energy, he can see.
No, he was seeing them like I'm seeing clearly as I'm seeing you on the screen. Now,
So what
as
is
my
it?
kids have gotten older, my youngest was actually he shut down pretty fast. Like he's can if he really gets quiet and digs in, then he opens it back up. But he was seeing a lot of spirits, and it was very scary for him when he was little. So I just let him close that down, and when he's ready to open that door back up, he can. And then my other two are freshman and sophomore in high school. My oldest, the one with Down syndrome and autism, the door's always open for him. I mean, he kind of lives here, but he also lives on the other side of the veil. But my middle one, he's like, nope, I'm in my teen years. I'm doing my own thing.
Mhm.
Now, at times he sees, but it's not like he's actively seeking or wanting to.
Yeah. Do you feel like since they've always had it, it's kind of like they take it for granted or?
Yeah, and I do think like my middle has shut down quite a bit, but on purpose, like he wanted to. When he was in starting junior high, that's when I came up with the whole unmeshing. I taught a bunch of classes. I have videos on that, which are like the biggest hit videos on YouTube of mine because when he was getting ready to start seventh grade and he was going through puberty and all that, I was ascending. My frequency was changing really fast. And so his soul came to me in meditation and said, "Hey, I need to unmesh our energy fields because I don't want to move as fast as you are." And what he showed me then was chain link fences, like you're trillions of atoms, I'm trillions of atoms. So going back to when I say we're clean, is like we're not forming bonds between our atoms of energy and creating these chain links that are linking us together, like you're sovereign, I'm sovereign. So with our kids, naturally, with every kid with their parent or caretaker, we form these energetic bonds. Now, naturally, in the olden days, the Native Americans had processes. A lot of other tribes back in the day had processes of boys becoming men.
Mhm.
They would go on these journeys. Girls becoming women, they would go on like these journeys. That was a natural breaking of the bonds from the parents unmeshing process. Now it's more kids moving out of the house, going to college. That's an unmeshing process. But,
Yeah.
so he
That's so.
unmeshed for me, wanted to be very human, and I have to let him have his journey right now.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm sure, it just sounds normal knowing my teenagers, like when they were teens. Yeah, they don't really want us
Yeah.
telling them what to do or how to be, and so that
Yeah.
just feels like a natural
And that
process.
includes their angels and guides.
Exactly. So I never thought about, but yeah,
They are, they know more than everybody else. So that's how, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But it's natural and it's healthy. So,
yeah. And it makes me think about like how the Native Americans and indigenous tribes had it all right.
hmm
Why did we lose all of that they already knew moving forward when we would come in as?
I mean, we thought we knew better. It really was about power and control.
Yeah.
Not all religion's bad. Like, I don't want to say all religion is bad. I have a friend that's a pastor of a church back in Kansas, and she is phenomenal. And when I walk into that church, I feel so much love and Jesus. I usually like start weeping. But a
Mhm.
lot of the churches, um, back in the day, that's how they controlled people, was and how they stayed in power is by creating this sense of separation and taking these traditions away
Right.
because they make you doubt yourself. You're having to look externally for permission or approval or leadership instead of inward.
Yeah, and it's very good and bad and a lot of shame and
Mm-hmm.
guilt
Mm-hmm.
usually.
Yeah.
Well, so the reason I wanted to like dive into this topic is because if if we don't start talking about it, it's never going to be normalized. And we all have these abilities to tap in to to do the same work as psychics or mediums, or to read the Akashic records. And a lot of things are coming more online so that we do have access to so much more today. And I'm willing to tell my story and to talk about what I've discovered within myself so that other people can discover it too. Because what I realize is when I share things with my friends, they tell me about their experiences. Like, for example, you know, I've I realized that channeling was coming in when I was taking a bath. And I shared this with a friend of mine, and it all makes sense because the water is a great carrier of energy. And my friend said, "That's so weird because after my father died, I was in the bathtub and I felt his presence there." And she remembered being like, I feel weird. My dad's here, but we all have these experiences and they're not shared and they're not talked about. And I hope by hearing parts of our stories that people will be more open to talking about their own experiences and trying to feel into, these energetic um, entities or angels, or I'm not sure, whatever you want to call the energy around us that is available.
Everybody has it. Everybody is. But you have to, I think one thing that needs to be let go is that your gifts or the information, how it comes to you, is going to be like somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone's completely different in how they receive. Everyone's gifts are slightly different. So there are like amazing programs out there that you can take a class to learn how to channel or take a class, but you have to take it with a grain of salt because how you receive is different and how you interpret energy is going to be different because it's coming through your source energy codes. It's coming through your I am. So you're not going to see things exactly like me or vice versa, or feel things like I feel them. Everyone on the planet is different in the energy that they feel.
Yeah.
So you can't compare your gifts to anyone else and say, well, I'm not as psychic as Laura. Well, it's uncomparable because we're just all different.
And it filters through our own brains. And so I can't do the medical channeling that you can because I don't have that background. And
Right.
it's also part of my personality to be more direct and more to the getting down to business. So that's how my readings are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um, so I find that really interesting. The same information channeled in and out of me, and if you had the same information come in, it would be spoken in a different way. The same information would be given in a different way because of it's filtering through our different brains,
exactly.
our different mind, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being brave and sharing and playing with me today. Thank you for sharing with the audience, and thank the audience for being open to receiving. And you can comment your experiences down below if you want to be seen and held. This is a judgment free zone, obviously.
Yep, for sure.
We are all weird here. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being here.
We're real normal.
Yes. Well, actually, if you look up weird in the dictionary, it's like supernatural. So I like being weird, and I tell my kids, like, be proud, be weird. It's
Yeah.
superpower.
Well, then I've always been weird then. So,
Yeah.
no, but I always love talking to you. I loved our conversation, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you for liking, subscribing, and commenting down below. It helps the show keep going and it helps us know what content to bring you. So thank you. And until next time.
Bye.